Welcome, everyone, to the L7C podcast, My Hero Academia edition. Today, we are going to be talking about My Hero Academia episodes 107 to 110 in Season 5. And we have our My Hero enthusiast with us, Andrea, here with us. How are you doing today, ma'am?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am doing well. Last My Hero podcast, we were getting the people ready for the Meta Liberation War that is coming in a few short months. And these 4 episodes, we're focusing on the villains as My Villain Academia has officially started. So before we talk about the episodes, we did get news from our last podcast recording. If you remember, the last time we recorded the My Hero Academia third movie was just coming out, and that movie's already broken its own records in a very short time. I think it was like a week, 2 days, whatever it was. It was
fast. It was fast.
Smashed Heroes Rising. So guess looks excited in the States. And then we find out that we in the United States of America are getting the third My Hero movie on October 29th, 2021. So as of recording right now, a month and a couple weeks away. And how excited are you that the movie is coming out soon?
Super excited. I am a little upset that I won't be able to watch it with you, but I'm stoked for it. I just want to know what the hell happens, but honestly, after watching these 4 episodes, I'm more curious as to what the next episode holds for us versus the movie, which is probably bad to say, but
I think it's a super quick turnaround because the movie came out in August in Japan, and 2 months later it's in America. That's a lot quicker than it was for Heroes Rising. I know Heroes Rising was a couple months before it came.
I wonder why that is, because I feel like maybe they realize that the American market is a big market for them, so they want to turn out that content quicker. Or if it's just more strategic with kind of where we're going to end up with My Hero. Well, probably not. That movie... When does that movie take place in this timeline?
Well, remember in our last recording at the end of Uraraka, Froppy's, and Hato's episode, when they stopped the cargo thing, and that bad guy who's like, they keep messing with my stuff, and that's the bad guy for the movie.
That's right.
That's
right. So technically, well, we are in a flashback period, so that's
currently,
also... Okay.
Yeah,
okay,
so it's somehow in between this, because that's the main bad guy from the movie. Because remember, those were the episodes we were getting end credit scenes.
Yes.
And they showed him, he's like, all right, these people are messing with my stuff. And we're like, oh, that's the guy from the movie. And here we are. And it's kind of crazy that they're getting it out in 2 months' time because, I mean, it's not as bad depending on where you're at, but we're still in COVID era.
Yeah.
So you would think there'd be delays, but they're just like, nope, we're going to get this out. And half of me, maybe from a competitive market standpoint, they want to get this movie out in the States because all the other like fall shows are starting. Yeah. The last anime movie, Demon Slayer, starting fall. They're like, let us drop our movie to take some attention away from everything else, and then everyone will start watching our stuff again. Maybe. I mean, they do have to compete with each other. It is a money thing.
They do. Which is sad because they're all great. And if we all were made of money, we would spend all the money on all of it all of the time.
I know. So then the next time we probably record is we're going to have to probably like preview the movie a bit, like what we want to see in it, and because it'll be right before the movie.
Yeah.
So and then we're going to have a special one after the movie, like our movie review, and the question will be asked from the fans and ourselves: is this movie not just better than the previous 2, but is it better than Mugen Train? That will be the question that everyone is going to compare. Everyone is going to do articles.
Yes, they will. Yes.
On the last 2 big anime movies, and they'll be watching what it makes in the English box office. And
I mean, the other movie to compete with, it hasn't come out yet, but Jujutsu Kaisen's movie is coming out. I don't know the date, but it's coming out soon. So I wonder if that's going to eclipse everything else because of the popularity of that show. Plus, season 2 is coming out. Is it next summer?
But I would be careful for anyone who's trying to release an anime movie in 2022, because I mean, Dragon Ball's already claimed 2022, and you don't mess with them. So you don't mess with them. I mean, that's why everyone left that whole winter all alone when DBZ Broly came out in theaters. You You don't mess with the DB people. That's a fan base and money you do not want to trust. But we're excited for the movie. We're definitely going to preview it from what we know in a couple of weeks and what we hope to see. And it might be more clear because usually My Hero does like a weird episode like before movies. Mm-hmm. So maybe we'll get one of those going forward. But let's get into the episodes. First off, episode 107. And for my notes, because obviously we're not trying to give you guys spoilers so you watch it, but just stuff. This was Mike and Eraser's show. Like, this was their episode. It was focused on them. I know I've seen the pictures of them, and I don't want to, the original Big Three, but they had a very different name.
What was it in the translation? The Damigos?
No, Damigos.
Like, does that mean they were actually the Big Three, or were they just like the Three Musketeers and everybody thought they were done?
Yeah, and it's weird because the tone of this episode at the beginning, you had like childish antics. Like you had Ida, he was acting a little weird. Then you had Uraraka with the All Might Christmas ornament. That part was weird. With Mina. So, but then you go from that to super serious, going to the jail, interrogating. And we learned a lot about Nomus. Like, what did you have down for the episode? What did you think about that one?
My biggest takeaway was, and I don't mean to spoil, but it was like we found out that a particular character who I personally thought was a whole person turned out to actually be a Nomu, which is a whole lot more information for us that, okay, as far as we've seen, this person, this character, seemed to have independent thought and I don't want to say feelings, but like seem to move on their own and think on their own, whereas like the other Nomus we had seen were just kind of like straight attack dogs. So that opens up a whole new avenue, and I think it's the next episode where we see the bigger threat of the Nomus as they're coming, and which is scary. Just that whole, it's scary.
Yeah, it was weird that dynamic was now entered, that these were like, which is also another thing, like who in the League of Villains are grabbing these people? Like, where are you finding them? Do you find them when they're dead and turn them into a Nomu? Or do you find them when they're still alive, then turn them to a Nomu? Like, now that's a whole different thing, because the League of Villains, from what we've seen on the show, there's not that many of them. Maybe 10 max, if that.
Yeah. From
what we've seen on screen. So it's like, who's abducting these people? What are the... Like, it's very interesting with Nomu-wise, but it was definitely Mike and Eraser's episode, and Eraser showed probably the most emotion you've seen from him in the entire series to this point.
I honestly wonder if we'll see more than that, because, I mean, they touched on some very deep trauma for him, and it seems like regrets for him as well. So, like, I don't know if we'll see anything hit that hard going forward. Maybe, but honestly, I kind of hope not, because he's kind of the emotional rock for the class, even though, I mean, we have Bakugo, who doesn't show much for emotions, but they're all still children. So, like, being able to have Aizawa Eraserhead be that emotional rock for them, especially, I feel like, going through this war that they're about to go through, is something that they all need. Which doesn't mean he can't show emotions. I should preface that. It's just more so that being so open with them, it's not what anyone is used to from him, and I don't think he's comfortable with doing.
Could that also, on the flip side, make him more motivated in the war?
Oh, absolutely. Because
just referencing back to Demon Slayer, maybe he's fighting them and he's like, tell me if there's a cure. Like, if there's a way to cure this person, I want to know. So, like, that could be motivation now.
It could be, but he makes a comment about that. Maybe mini spoiler alert, but he makes a comment that, like, nothing that they do is going to bring a person back. Like, he already made that comment, so I don't think that necessarily would be motivation. I think it's more so the motivation of, I'm not going to let this shit happen to anybody else.
I agree. There is one thing that I would push back on, and then let's transfer to 108. And I do think there is two people who would know how to reverse them. They have to get them in. Because, I mean, All For One's not going to say anything. But the doctor, the off-brand Dr. Egghead.
Basically, yeah, with that mustache.
He has become an even bigger thing in episode 108. This is where literally My Villain Academia starts. It's actually 2 months ago from where the present of My Hero is. So this is flashback into 2 months ago when the villains were doing their thing. And you see the League of Villains, and we see a super big failsafe that All For One just had chilling underground. Yep. If he were ever to lose to All Might, which this guy, he's been the top villain for centuries for a reason. He always has a plan. But you go to the doctor, and you go in the lab, and we were talking about the Nomus. Now we got super Nomus.
Oh Lord. Because basically he even said the Nomu that Endeavor fought, pales in comparison to these, and there were multiple.
That's a problem. That's a problem. And the way the doctor was, he was able to transport the League of Villains to him because he didn't want them, the location and all that stuff. You talked about the super Nomus. And the thing that All For One hid, Gigamachia, basically an off-brand kaiju, Megazord, whatever Gundam, anything you think of.
Definitely, yeah.
Anything super tall and crazy, and he doesn't like Shigaraki because he's not All For One, so that's an interesting thing there. But you see them doing that, and you now, when we were watching, have said that you are 100% on board with a rumor that's been going on for years about My Hero, and if you want to take it away with the doc.
I am very much convinced that this doctor, because part of Aizawa and Mike's trip to the jail was to get information. Mm-hmm. And some of the information, the most crucial bit of information they got, spoiler, was regarding, a medical care facility. Mm-hmm. And so this guy's nickname is Doctor. Mm-hmm. We've seen kind of a glimpse in Deku's flashbacks of a doctor telling him, that he's quirkless. Mm-hmm. And this quote-unquote doctor that they have working for them in the League looks suspiciously like Deku's doctor that says he's quirkless. Mm-hmm. I am very much on this train that doctor took Deku's quirk and has been potentially either flagging people as potential bases for Nomus, and or might be stealing corpses for bases for Nomus based off of their quirk. And if this is true, it just all makes so much sense to me. It really does.
Guess what that thing, everyone has always thought that he, it's been a rumor forever, and I don't even think it's been confirmed in the manga yet, or that would have been shared all over the internet, It hasn't. So, it's been a rumor that doctor's the same one who took Deku's quirk. Everyone's wondering why. Like you said, the flag thing, did he have a quirk that could have potentially affected All For One? But I don't know if that would have happened. You couldn't have foreseen the future that All Might would have ran into this boy, right, and sure. Unless you have some future seeing quirk that you have, but with All For One, you never know. The dude has almost every quirk in existence. So it's the motive then, my thing with that rumor is why? What was it that you had to take it away from this guy when you have all these other people?
Right. I honestly don't have an answer to that. I feel like the key to that is whatever potentially Deku's dad's quirk was. Because then I feel like, at least with the genetic component of quirks, you could try to deduce what Deku's base quirk actually was. What's his mom's quirk? It was something, is it water-based?
It was something, elemental type based. Yeah, I can look it up while you're going.
But it wasn't anything, from what I understood, anything super powerful, or at least she never worked it that way. So, I don't see if he had that quirk, that would have been, flag-worthy. I feel like it had to have been something very niche, and would have had to have solved a problem that All For One needed to have solved, either immediately or in the near future. Kind of like with the Heroes Rising movie that Nine's going after that guy because he has the ability to regenerate cells, and it turns out he can't regenerate cells for, what was it, type B blood or something uber specific like that. So I feel like Deku's base quirk would have had to have been something.
Well, Deku's mom's quirk is actually not named.
Oh, it's not?
No, it's actually, she has basically Nagato, shout out to Naruto's ability, where she can pull small objects towards her body from afar.
Okay, so
it is elemental type based, but that's actually very, very cool.
That is interesting. Huh.
So you have that, and you have, like, with the doctor, we're gonna have to wait and see probably for a long time to ever get that. But then you have Shigaraki with him talking about the fragments of his past, like, because he doesn't remember anything. And the thing where when he meets All For One, and All For One's like, oh, all those people who didn't help you, I bet they all said a hero will save them. Like, basically, like, a hero will save them, it's not. And just
it's not my problem, it'll be somebody else's problem. Somebody else will fix it.
And just to relate that to real life, I mean, that's a real life thing where if something's happening, you have everyone pulling out their phone to record, but no one calling 911.
Because they're all assuming somebody else is already doing that.
But they want it for, like, the views. Like, someone could be bleeding on the street. Oh, let me pull my phone out so I can put it on Instagram or all that stuff. But no one calls 911. So when I wrote that one, I was like, man. But, and then the doctor came out with all the hands of the
dead relatives
that apparently he killed, but that's what they were saying it. But I don't know. I'm kind of feeling like we're talking about flagging Deku. I feel like Shigaraki was flagged by All For One and the doctor to do that, and then also to do another. My favorite rumor, where Deku might have been flagged, is maybe because when he came in when his mom was slimmer at the time, and that doctor saw the mom's face and instantly thought of Shigaragi's grandmother, All Might's teacher, and be like, this is too uncanny. We might have to
nip this in the bud.
Mm-hmm.
That's valid.
Which also, my biggest thing with Shigaraki, the reason I don't like him is, like, very first episode, like first season, he talks about he hates All Might because All Might was the reason his grandma died. And you actually see glimpses of a grandma. We were like, oh, but your master killed your grandma. Do you not know that your master killed your grandma? That's my biggest thing with him. And if he does know, then how is it All Might's fault that she's dead? It'd be your master's fault because he was the one who literally grabbed her heart out. So, makes no sense.
Yeah, that is a little bit of cognitive dissonance that just doesn't quite compute. But also, considering the fact that he has no memories prior to his master, do
you think those got altered?
Yes. Yes. I do believe his memories have been altered and or in a way wiped, but then you get back into touching into the Nomu stuff. Like, there's some things that are just too emotionally potent to truly fully forget. You might forget the details, and I believe there's some, like, Alzheimer's research recently that there's more emotional memory than, like, factual memory. So, yeah.
And then also one of the biggest things about this episode is you're I'm jokingly saying your crew, the Meta Liberation Army, their leader calls Shigaraki and tells them, hey, we have your broker and we know everything about you guys. We know you're on the mountains and shoot throughout latitude and longitude GPS coordinates. We have a satellite up in space
watching your ass.
And we have 116 people ready to go. And I was like
116,000 people.
And I remember seeing that and looking at your reaction, and you were in shock that the leader, that Meta Liberation leader, was just able to call willy-nilly, and he's like, oh yeah, we have 116K. And we have a satellite.
Also for me, I was just like, wait. So the leader, because obviously it seemed like the Meta Liberation Army had a different leader, because in the intro we had some people we hadn't seen before. But I figured this was going to be a reaching out moment of like, hey, let's combine our strength, let's get this shit done. No, this was another freaking overhaul moment of like, F you. Your resolve is weak, your ideas are stupid, so I'm going to put you in this corner where either you're going to come meet us and meet our 116,000, militants, or we're going to give the pro heroes your location. Yep. You're going to get beat down by either one of us, but you're getting beat down.
And he named basically the top 5.
Yeah. And ironically, he did include Hawk, so obviously it's not well known that, it's still pretty well hidden that he's being a double agent. So, like, I thought that was great, throwing it out there because at least in Shigaraki's mind, well, maybe it hasn't happened yet. Is he already?
Technically, he's triple.
Oh, right.
Because from when we saw in the present, he is in the league.
Yeah.
So that'd make him a double.
Right.
But he's also in the Meta Liberation Army. Because remember, he had the meeting.
Because he had the meeting with that stupid freaking hero slide and go that we met during one of these episodes. And
because this is 2 months before what we saw in the present.
Right.
So we don't know if the Liberation Army and the villains are doing that. So right now seeing those episodes, technically right now he is a triple agent. So technically he could, we don't know what's behind. He could have been giving information that Dobby gives him to the Meta Liberation Army, then sliding that stuff to the villains while sliding both stuff to the heroes. Because remember what Eraser and Mike, when they were done with their stuff, they called Hawks when he was like, now's the time. I was like, oh, hopefully this isn't a time skip. We're in 4 months because you guys aren't ready for that. Right. So currently right now, Hawks is a triple agent until the League and the Liberation Army become coerced in each other. Then they're a double agent. So yeah, he's doing triple.
He's doing too much. Poor guy.
Yeah, which is, I still want to know why he was picked. That's something I really want to.
I think it has something to do with the backstory, I'm pretty sure.
But that's triple, and then that is a lot. But so they get that call. The villains decide they're going to go save their broker, and then we go into 109. Anything else in 108 you wanted to mention on 108?
The only other thing to note was that Grand Machina, whatever thing, that basically the doctor gave Shigaraki, like, kind of the same thing that All Might did for Deku, was like, your body or you need to be at a certain level before I can do certain things. So basically he was given the task to defeat the giant machine human thing. And so they get into kind of like those details of how that fight goes or why that fight is taking so long. And part of the reason Shigaraki was like, well, yeah, they have an army, but this thing is hell-bent on finding me and killing me, so once it wakes up from its nap, essentially, like, it'll come and destroy a whole bunch of shit to come get me. So that was the decision that was made, because then when we get into the episodes, that does back. So that was the only thing I wanted.
And with that stuff that they, which you did not like seeing on screen, that black spit stuff that took them out. How familiar are you with, like, the Suicide Squad from, like, DC?
I have not watched Suicide Squad.
Well, long story short, Amanda Waller, who's played by Viola Davis, one of the greatest, they put bombs in the back of their head, so if you go out of line, they blow your heads up.
Yeah.
Now I'm starting to think, too, if the League of Villains ever just, you know how anime is, randomly, maybe series finale, they decide to be good or turn themselves in and fight all for one in the series finale of My Hero. And you're like, oh, no, we put bombs in your head a long time ago if you ever acted out as, like, control thing. Because I can see All For One. The only person I think All For One trusts is the Doctor.
Oh, for sure.
I think that's so. I feel like they have contingency plans for anything else if they happen.
And legitimately everything.
So then we go into 109 and you literally see all these different Meta Liberation warriors and how they're sleeping and all stuff. But this episode was all about Toga. Yeah. This was her episode. You get to see actually some of her backstory and what led her to be who she is. And I guess it's kind of sad in the sense that it's like in a real life thing, if you have a child who you deem as weird, and then you just want her to be normal and you shun her, and then obviously we're not in a superhero world, but then she just goes off and
busts out. Well, the other thing was, it seemed like at one point they were talking about how they want her to be normal, so she tried to be normal, so she put, in very realistic terms about, like, people with depression, also people with, that are neurodivergent, masking, just suppressing who you are, how you act, your thoughts, your actions to be accepted, and how, the longer you suppress something, a lot of times the more powerful it grows, the more hold it has on your life, and so I kind of wish we would have gotten kind of more of a chronological story flashback for her, because we had a flash of a character that looked kind of like Deku, and I was like, who is this person and what's going on? And then
I was confused. I was like, there's no way they were in the same middle school, and then because that'd make a lot of things full circle.
That's a little too close to it.
But also, the Deku in middle school wasn't the dude who would have been doing that from what we saw. From like the very first, he wouldn't punch somebody.
No, but he would throw himself into the fight.
He would throw himself
so
into the fight.
I think that's the similarity that she might have seen with Deku when she first met him. But I just want to know who the heck that is. Like, what was going on? Like, was he sticking up for her? Was he just like, what? I would assume that's the like plot point, but we didn't get that much information. Yeah. And I was just so scared for her. I was so.
Oh, you're a Toga fan.
I wouldn't say I'm a Toga fan because that's taking it too far. I think essentially once I took that test that was like, which villain are you? And then I got Toga. I was like, oh, okay. We're connected now.
Have you ever done the hero one? Like, if you do the hero one and you get Uraraka, you have two sides of a very different coin.
Oh, that's not good. I don't remember if I've done
one. But she loves Uraraka. Which,
she does.
The biggest thing for me with her is I honestly thought if she fought an upper tier hero who knew her ability, she'd get her ass smoked. But
she bossed up. She leveled
up.
Up.
Now that's the problem now, that if she's able to take the blood and do the quirk, that's a meta ability. That's problematic, but it also goes back to what end? Like, does it have to be like, no disrespect to Uraraka, does it have to be like a basic quirk like that you really don't need that much training? You touch them and like, could she touch someone like Todoroki and get half hot, half cold?
I would assume so. I think the issue would come again with like Monoma, like getting those
with the dud
quirks. Mm-hmm. Like, she couldn't. I don't think she can. She might still have some of Deku's blood, but I don't think she can turn into Deku and. No, one for all.
Well, let me throw it. Even if it's not, let me throw you, since you brought moments. Let me throw you a super dangerous one.
Oh, no.
This is actually going to 1010. We talk about twice, but this is going to relate to 109 about how you see the flashback of him trying to copy the bullets.
Yes, the racing bullets.
What if Shigaraki finds out that Toga can do the blood thing and copy their quirks, and then now he wants to try and get Eri? Because he'll remember that thing came from her, and it's like, if we can get one sample of her blood, Twice can copy the blood, give it to Toga, and if you have the ability to do rewind, I feel like it'd be a dud. But what if it's not? What if something like that were to happen? Because they had 3 bullets left in the flashback, which 3 is a lot more than 0, and that is super dangerous. If they find a way to mass produce, that's like, when we saw those bullets, we were just like, oh my gosh.
Well, that's the other thing about them is, like, with the My Villain Academia, I feel like overall it's giving us, I feel like part of the strategy in kind of making them always like a third part of a triangle where it's not always like they're the central bad guys, makes us like love them, so when they do kind of collide, it's going to make it that much more impactful. But part of the reason I feel like the League is so dangerous, especially if they get a hold of something like that, at least with like Overhaul, that goal was very clear. So then if that goal is clear, you can estimate or guesstimate the steps needed to achieve that goal, so then you can plan and predict and strategize. With Shigaraki, one of people's complaints about him is that his goal is kind of just mass chaos and out there. So it's harder to predict, strategize, and understand what they're going to do with everything. So that is, those bullets are hella dangerous to start, but in the hands of somebody who doesn't have a clear idea of what they want, which is part of the doctor's test, I think, for Shigaraki, it just becomes like anybody is a target, and anything is a target.
We don't know. Well, we don't know if these two are going to combine forces, but if they start sharing intel and they tell the Meta Liberation Army that they have quirks stealing bullets, and the dude's like, I have a way to, like, that is really stacking the odds against the heroes wise. But no, Toga really upgraded, which caused me for some concern going forward with her. And now thinking about, because I know when we're off podcast, we're like talking about the strength of the women, and she's in the same age range. It's like, now, where would you put Toga in like ranks of the women of strength wise? You don't have to answer that now, but probably do it off. But we've never actually thought about adding her into the ranks of the women of her age range, because she's a little bit older, but I think she's around the same age as
I think so.
Hato, the big three. So
yeah,
But no, she bossed up there. Then you get also with 109, I didn't write his name down, but he goes into 1010 too, who's fighting Dobby. This Ice dude is the real deal.
Holy crap. Like, oh, wow. Wow. He's doing things with Ice that I'm like, can Shoto do that? Because if Shoto could do that, that would be baller.
He would upgrade. The dude made a freaking dragon.
Dragon out of ice.
But he
can, but it's like, what is it? He can't create ice. He can only manipulate water to make it colder and control ice.
Gaten. Like Goten, but with an E. Ah. But he can do, and he can manipulate temperature.
Yeah.
So like when he's like changed the whole temperature of the water in all the pipes, it literally turned all the water in the city to freezing, and he busted that open to going into 1010 because now it becomes twice his episode where we look at his drama, things like that, and then he gets his upgrade, and he goes and he makes 1 million of them, whatever. So he basically just evens the odds against the Meta Liberation Army. And then Iceman, he's just like, you know what? All right. And shoots ice and everyone's just like, oh my god.
The only person that doesn't flinch is Dobby, even though Dobby is the one that should be flinching because the guy made the very astute perception that of like, hey, so like, you know, if the Liberation Army wins, essentially the strength of your meta ability, which is, I guess, the original name for Quirk, is going to determine your social class and your social standing. So in these fights, it's going to be very beneficial for you to be able to perceive and understand other people's quirks. And he noticed that Dobby smelled like he was burning, and then we could see a little bit of fumes coming from, you know, the edge of his hand where, you know, the burnt skin meets the regular skin. And now we, you know, I don't want to say now, but now it becomes more apparent that it's like, you know, that skin is not just for look, it very much is damaged. And in theory, if he doesn't temper himself, his whole body could be that way, and he could burn to a crisp.
He also made the astute thing about like the only League of Villains long distance fighter, and then when he said that, I never thought of it until he said it. I'm like, wow,
right?
He is the only one who could fight long distance.
Yeah.
Oh, like I was just thinking about their whole team. I was like, I don't know if that's a good team composition, but no, Ice. Genten, he is something else.
Well, Shigaraki's getting there. Shigaraki also, we noticed, gets a little bit of a bump where, I guess, spoiler alert a little bit, that he didn't actually have to touch people, like, and they all just combusted.
Well, yeah, because they combusted. I thought he touched one of them, but maybe because he touched one, and that person was, like, you know how, like, if you're running in
like
a group.
Chain.
Yeah, like a chain reaction.
I don't know, because, what's his name? Is it Spinner? Yeah, Spinner, the one that dresses like Stain, was behind him, was like, I thought he made a comment that he didn't touch them.
I thought he made that comment that he didn't touch most of them, like all of them. But either or, they were all gone, and they do get to their broker, and then you see the Meta Liberation boss. I'm just saying he's the boss now, because currently on screen, he's the boss. He might, for all we know, there might be a dude above him that's not been shown yet, but right now, he's shown that he has strength to be a boss because he was not fazed by the League of Villains busting into his tower. And I even forgot to mention in 108 with their broker, they cut all of his fingers off and placed them at all places that the League of Villains have. That is some wild stuff.
I mean, for me, my question for the Meta Liberation Army is like, if you're not trying, because essentially, what it sounds like to start is they're trying to squash them. Just in general. They're trying to obliterate them because they see them as a nuisance to their message. However, as one of the, like, I don't want to say co-leaders, but, like, I would say generals. Like, one of the generals for the Liberation Army, the one that's talking to Toga, kind of comments that, like, hey, Toga, like, you know, what you're fighting for is the same shit we're fighting for. Why don't we, like, work this shit out? And Toga's like, no. And in that way, it kind of illustrates that the League of Villains are kind of stubborn children and that they want to do things their own way. So it makes sense that the Liberation Army wants to squash them. The only power it looked like they were after was Twice's. So
well, they could double their numbers.
Triple.
And you got 1/6. You have 116 2 months ago. When you go back to present day, when the Hawks was giving that book, it was 100K. So maybe they lost 16K, or maybe they recruited this 2 months. Who knows? Maybe anime sometimes writers. But either or, they have more people than heroes.
Right.
So, and when they were showing, what I liked about these episodes, when they were showing like some of the heroes, which Slip and Slide, which man sounds like Slip and Go, just a great safe sex turncoat, safe sex slogan, all that jazz. But they did not show anyone else that we know.
No.
Which I really like that, because there are other heroes that we know, and last time we recorded, I think there's people in the top 10 who there's a betrayer, and when they show whoever it is, that's going to have us in shock. We know it's not the top 2 right now, but anyone else I honestly think is fair game. Because now you don't know.
You don't know, but I very much don't want to believe that.
I don't think
do not want to believe that.
I don't think Dragon Lady is, though. So that's 3 out of the top 10. I do not think.
I don't think Mirko would be either.
I don't think she would be. So that's I don't really know much about her. So I would say 3.5.
She just reminds me so much of Bakugo. Bakugo was going to turn. He already had the opportunity. He would have. I feel like she's that way.
I don't think Bakugo would ever have turned, though, because villains always lose, and he doesn't want to be a loser.
But not the most morally sound argument, but whatever.
But there are people in there, and I just 110 just in Japan. Like, if you're just doing the numbers, it's like someone. Because when we saw the guy, you're slipping, whatever is happening, slip and go. Remember the first episode we saw him, he was congratulating Bakugo and Todoroki. Next episode, he's at the Hawks meeting as a medal.
Other pro heroes is mentioned. We just don't see them again, and we never get their name. We only got his name this last episode, or the last 2 episodes.
So I can't wait to fight. That was smart, because if they would have shown someone that we were oh my gosh, we know them, or that would have been wild. But then we got Skeptic, who was one of the bosses, I guess main people, I don't know, their doctor or whatever, but he was controlling the people with the keyboard, telling them oh, break his arm. Man, that was a good break anime wise, because we were both ugh, that was
nasty. He basically controls puppets from that little laptop.
Yes.
So essentially he made puppets that look like Twice to amp up his whole psychological trauma,
which is
smart, essentially, but it backfired. Mm-hmm. Spoiler. But the man used Twice's copies to break his own arms, and at the same time, both ways, as his other copies were basically trying to kill Toga by snapping her neck. But that was the slowest neck snap I've ever seen.
Super slow. There's no way that flashback was going on in 10 seconds of half the episode. But now my thing with Toga and Twice now is Toga talks about the things she loves and all that stuff. So if Toga loves Twice and gets Twice's blood, wouldn't that make them a quadruple army? Because she'd be able to do his ability, then his ability on his ability. They can do some serious numbers now, but then you get the end of it with Shigaragi and the Meta Liberation leader basically having
a
square off, and
that big old
Gigamachia shows up, which is kind of crazy that it would have been in the hour whatever time, but yeah, what are your thoughts on these? This is My Villain Academia era. What are you thinking about what's to happen? This army, you saw some people with Iceman still around. I actually don't hope he dies, but I feel like Dobby's gonna kill him when he gets his upgrade. But
for sure,
he unfortunately, even though he's a meta, he would be a great teacher to Shoto. That would give Shoto the upgrade of upgrades.
I know, and it's the side that he prefers to use too. It's just, I feel like as much as Shoto Todoroki is my favorite character, I don't want to call him aloof, but he's a little bit spacey, and I feel like that hinders his imagination and being able to use his quirk, because with Bakugo, he has used his quirk in ways that most people wouldn't automatically think an explosive quirk would be used. So I feel like, not to make a pun or anything, but I feel like somebody needs to light a fire under Shoto's ass to be more inventive with his powers, with his quirks.
Yeah, I think the only people who would be able to are the people he's in the internship with Midoriya and Bakugo. Bakugo, just because he doesn't care. He'll say whatever he wants to say. And Midoriya, from a fact that not with his words, but since Shoto's seen his actions, and even like when they had to get their provisional license and he said they were falling behind. But it's like everyone else, and that's the problem with the gifted sometimes. If you don't have the inner stuff, everyone else just coddles them in the class. Like, oh, Shoto, you're so great. Oh, this, you're so great. This. I think he would, if you want to send him on a one thing journey, you need to have him have like training sessions with the Wind dude from the other school who used to hate his dad. Those two, that would be
pushed each other. They did.
But so like, besides, what else? What else are you thinking? Like, this is, your heroes are getting. We're watching the villains now upgrade. They're getting in a tighter and tighter spot. The heroes are. Yeah,
they are. I mean, that's the only thing I can say after watching all of it is I feel such levels of anxiety because it is like, at one point I even commented like, oh, sweet, Shigaraki's like decimating a whole bunch of these people.
Yeah, I know. You said, oh, they're getting rid of the number.
Like, they're going to whittle down the army, but it's like, well, damn. Honestly, the way I see this going is that they're either going to come to some sort of agreement or Shigaraki's going to leave the army somehow. And that's a problem because, they did. I mean, Shigaraki did definitely kill like a good group of people. Twice, I think, did too. Dabi, I think he burned a couple people.
Yeah, he burned a couple people.
But it's just like, is that going to be enough of a dent? This is also 2 months ago, so they could do more recruitment. Plus, they're also basically, a lot of the people they were killing were like, pawns on a chessboard.
Well,
they're not even
that's what I said. That's what I said. There's no way their strongest people are there right now. So that's my concern. Like, who are the strongest people? And that's what led me to like their top heroes in the rankings, because there's no way you risk your strongest to get hurt.
Oh no! Especially when essentially, I mean, the leader of the Liberation Army, he's called a Redestro. Basically made a comment that the League of Villains is essentially a club without a clear goal, so they were just going to squash them like bugs. Essentially, that was the whole thing. So no, you're not going to put your ace in the hole out there to squash a fucking bug.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it's pretty intense right now. Like that, I think my favorite episode was 108 when they called the League of Villains. It basically is like, it reminded me of the first Avengers movie when Black Widow's in the interrogation thing and Coulson calls the bad guys to give her the phone, and they're like, oh yeah, we have all these like helicarriers ready to just blow up your block, and the dude was like, oh yeah, we have a satellite right now. We can call the heroes right now. They'll believe us because half of us are here. No, 99% of us are all heroes. And we also see politicians involved in this now, and this is a very entangled web, and this is not, I mean, it's good for TV purposes, but this was not the time to not have All Might.
Right. Also, my other thought while watching a lot of, I say watching, obviously we need subtitles, but like in the rhetoric, I had a lot of flashbacks to X-Men.
Yep, exactly.
Like, the whole meta liberation is that, okay, we're not actually free if we're not allowed to use our meta abilities to their fullest potential in our everyday lives.
When you bringing that up, it's exactly like the third X-Men movie, X-Men Last Stand.
Yeah.
Where they also had a shot that could get rid of the X gene if you get hit by it.
Yeah.
And like you had, it's almost exactly, that's a very good comparison on you.
Then you get into that same argument that I had when watching X-Men. It's like, yeah, that's true. But then you also realize that nobody can be 100% free to live exactly how they want on every freaking whim, because you sacrifice that ability to live within, a structured, quote unquote, safe society. Like, you can't, not every single person can have every freedom available to just do things on a whim, because there's no guarantee for safety, there's no structure, there's no stability. So it's kind of that understanding that as a society we do need to offer up some degree of freedom.
Yeah.
But there are those that disagree and feel that the natural order of things should be chaos, because that is, once chaos settles, once there's a general hierarchy situated, it's just going to self-contain. But no.
It's great.
Yeah.
Anything else on these episodes before we close it down?
I wonder how long the My Villain Academia is actually going to last. Like, part of me wants it to be not the remainder of this season, but like a good chunk of it. Like, it
could be the remainder of this year, but it also depends on if they're going to have one more episode tying into the movie at the end of the month.
That's true.
At the end of October's month.
Yeah.
But I think it could go to the end of the year.
I very much, I think the only reason I think that won't happen is because, like, we basically got Toga and a second glimpse into Twice's backstories.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very quick. Like, it was very down and dirty, very quick. So I feel like if they were going to make it more, if they were going to make it longer in length, they were going to give Toga that whole episode and a half to fully draw out her backstory.
And they can tie it in with the villains. I just thought, because you brought up Toga, whenever they're done with this stuff, because I don't think she's going to die, and she's healing and stuff, and like the first thing she does is like check her phone and turn on the TV, and the first thing she sees is from CNN that Izuku Midoriya is a murderer, and she's like, what has happened? And then that's the tie-in into the movie.
That would be so cool. Also, she would just fall more in love with him.
She would, but she would want to go fight him. Like, I need to know what happened. And like, Twice isn't going to let her leave bed. She's like, tell me what happened. And then he's like, well, this is what's been, so that's the way to tie in the movie. Anything else?
Nope. I think that's it.
And with that, thank you, Andrea, for being our My Hero Academia person. We're definitely going to have one every 4 episodes, as always, and then probably try and do an extra one just to give our thoughts on what we want from the movie, and then we'll have to do one about the review of the movie. And then we talked about at the beginning, we will be going down that dreaded road of which My Hero movie we like better, and was it as good or if not better than Mugen Train, because that is what everyone will compare it to going forward. So with that being said, thank you everyone for listening to the L7C podcast. My Villain Academia has officially started, and everyone take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of the L7C podcast. Be sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe to the channel. Follow us on all social media platforms, and we'll be talking to you guys soon. Take care.